All right, sorry I ran out of space, but I was talking about how difficult it is to network here in Phoenix because you got a lot of people who are drinking, and a lot of times I don't tolerate environments like that, behaviors that surround the drinking. And also, a lot of people here hang in groups that are already established. I kind of have a workaround on that. I'm going to get to it in a second. But I uh, I was having a lot of difficulty networking with people, and also these last 2 years, I started to want to meet the right person again. I know for a long time, I was happily married to myself. In fact, going into the pandemic, that was a huge conflict for me, right? But something happened that made me want to, a couple of things happened that made me want to meet the right person. First, I took the job at the community college where I hang around a lot of people who are married or in committed relationships, at least, right? And I quickly realized how big of a competitive disadvantage at, right? My colleagues will have household chores taken care of. Meanwhile, when I work late, I have to wonder where my dinner is going to come from. A lot of times, my colleagues don't appreciate that I want to have a life outside of work. Sometimes one of my colleagues will say, "Hey, can you fill in on a Saturday?" And maybe that Saturday I just don't happen to have anything going on. And I'll volunteer to do that. Next thing I know, I'm scheduled for Saturday every Saturday for the rest of eternity. I've learned if I want to fill in on a Saturday, let's say it's really important, right? My colleague uh, got COVID or needs to tend to a funeral or any number of important life events, right? And I have nothing going on a Saturday, right? And I can fill in that one time, right? I've learned to do it this way to say, oh, I was planning to do this on Saturday, but you know what? I understand you're going through chemotherapy or whatever it is. Uh, let's support each other. If you do it that way, it doesn't become I'm available every Saturday for the rest of eternity. It becomes, you know what, I'm normally not available Saturday, but I'll do you a favor, and let's work together. And they can still ask for a different Saturday, right, in the future, but it doesn't become an automatic yes anymore, right? That's the flavor I want to give. And also, you can ask for a Tuesday that you might want to take off because it might be your only opportunity to go on a date or something like that, right? So that's the kind of flavor I want to give, right? But I was naive, and before I knew it, I had all the awkward shifts, and so on the surface, people were very thankful that I was doing these awkward shifts. But dig deeper, when I wanted to take time off to go to a solar eclipse, a lunar eclipse, go on a date on a day that I normally work, or even go on a date on a Saturday where I didn't work in the past, but I was naive enough to do one favor. All of a sudden, it didn't seem to flow in the same direction anymore, right? And so and then, top all of that off, last summer it was 115 degrees outside, and I got COVID-19, and so I was all alone. And people didn't treat me very well, by the way. I would go to the store, and people would give me heck for crashing on their mobility scooter to eat because it was 110 degrees outside. I was dehydrated. I was low blood sugar. I was disoriented, and so I don't even remember half the details of that day. Probably, I had gone to a local Fry's grocery store. We have a lot of those. They're owned by Kroger. I had gotten 5 or 6 bananas, and I sat on the mobility scooter to eat it because I was so dehydrated. I was living alone at the time, and the security guard gives me heck. He comes over to see what's going on, and so I said, I'll make it quick. I'm just recovering from COVID-19. And the only reason he backed off from trying to kick me out of the store was because he heard COVID-19. Had I said that, I'm just recovering from chemotherapy, I'll make it quick, he probably couldn't have given a damn. He probably would have dragged me out of the store. right? Thank God it was COVID-19, right? I got to do the next summer when I'm actually not that sick. I'm going to have to do that again, but this time say that I'm just recovering from chemotherapy. See what he does, right? I guarantee he'll drag me out of the street. It'll be comical to see, right? I got to try that at some point. But anyway, that inspired me to go out and try to team up with somebody. But it's a lot easier said than done, obviously, right? Especially here in Phoenix. One day, out of frustration, I decided to tell. I was asking a number of my friends if they could set me up on blind dates, and I was getting nowhere with that. Out of frustration, I pulled out a 1 kilogram silver bar. I said, I'll give you this if you could set me up on a blind date. Unfortunately, my friend that I was telling this to, he doesn't know what a kilogram of silver is worth. He was like, why do I want more clutter in my house? Can you believe him? Can you believe him? Anyway, so so I started to officially offer that reward. I think it was just before Labor Day of last year. Go watch my videos. I proudly recorded it when I first offered it, and then I added a few more things to the reward. Eventually, it included some indium, bismuth, and a bunch of art, a bunch of non-metallic art material stuff as well. Go watch that video. I had a series of videos where I added to the reward. But I just wanted to go on any blind date. And the reason for that is that deep down, I knew if I could go on one blind date that it would usher me into another social group or it would just be the right one for good, right? I knew that. I just, if we were to draw a little bit of a continuum, the gap between seeing a complete stranger and getting that first date is probably almost as big as going from first date to happily ever after. That gap is just so big. It's a lot easier for me to go from a first date to a second date. It's a lot easier for me to go from a first date to taking a trip with somebody, right? I've done that a few times too. It's a lot easier for me to go from a first date to any number of things, right? Then perhaps her introducing me to her friends. It's a lot easier for me to do that than to go from complete stranger to first date, right? Leave a comment. If I had to guess, if complete stranger were 0 and first date were like 100, happily ever after is probably only 300-400 at best. I would imagine in terms of the toughness of it. Getting her to introduce you to her friends, is assuming that first date doesn't go well, that's probably only 120, 130 probably, I want to say. Going on a trip with somebody is probably 150, 160, I want to say. I'll let you leave a comment. Anyways, so my friend at the church was moved by my series of videos, and he says, "Oh, you don't have to offer all that. You're going to get a lot of scams if you do that." And he hosts a meetup group, and he wrote about me on there, and I felt kind of embarrassed. He put my picture, and some details about what I do for a living, what I do for fun, and I felt kind of embarrassed. I don't think I've ever seen a meetup like that. But you know what? I was so lost that I entertained that idea. What was really funny was my friend at the church knew I was autistic and didn't want too many people in that group. And so he capped it at, I think, 10 or so people. And before we knew it, it was completely booked out. And even then, people still wanted to join the wait list. Eventually, we had to have a second event altogether, and both of them turned out very well. I gave him the reward because I didn't want bad karma. He didn't want it, but I insisted. I didn't want bad karma. Years later, if the date doesn't go right or we end up in a fight, I didn't want bad karma. And besides, he needed it more than I did. He didn't even know what silver was worth. Well, he on top of the other friend, this is a different guy now. He didn't know what silver was worth. He didn't know about bismuth. And so He also gave me a number of suggestions. You may remember there was a Lego art piece as well. He gave me a number of suggestions there, and also most importantly, he started investing in mining stocks, and I'm so glad I was an inspiration. And I feel like I've passed on the baton, right? Because after all, the entire reason that I invest in first precious metals and then strategic metals, all of that happened by accident as well, right? I was 14 years old when I started investing in precious metals. I had gone to the bank, and this bank teller had told me that they got these weird $50 coins, and a bunch of them were silver, and that's how I got interested in silver. And then 2 decades later, my student at the tutoring center got me involved in strategic metals, and so it's nice, right? We all have to pick it up in a weird way, right? For him, it was because some guy was desperate for a date, right? And the date has gone very actually part of the reason I'm living where I'm living now. She knew a friend who was looking for a roommate. I had lost my apartment due to some accidents. We had a flood, and the landlord was kind of dragging her feet. I had to move out, and so I'm so pleased that it turned out the way that it did. I got a good deal on this. Just the amount that I save on it, it's gonna, it's already paid for the reward that I gave out, right? And so I. It's all good now. Everybody was chiding me when I was offering the reward, though. That was kind of funny, and now everybody's had to take back their words. Most most importantly, after I went on the date, I felt comfortable about traveling again. Part of the reason I haven't taken a vacation in 5 years, I didn't realize this consciously, but subconsciously, I worried at the end of the trip to Taiwan, and I have to fly back home. I don't want to fly back to a lonely world again. After I had gone on the date and made this circle of friends, I didn't feel that way anymore, and I finally took the trip to Taiwan. Well, my grandmother passed away. It was also her funeral. During the trip to Taiwan, I asked my grandmother to continue to set me up on blind dates. And before I knew it, I met a girl in Taiwan. Give you an idea of how big we hit it. After we had come back from our date on the train, I had to ride the train back to the hotel. She needed to get off in Taipei Main Station. When the train pulled up to Taipei Main Station and she exited the train, it was like watching part of me just walk away into the crowd. I was so heartbroken. I had to fly home the next day. And when I got onto the plane for the first time in my life, because I usually like to digitally detox from time to time, for the first time in my life, I found myself buying Wi Fi on a plane just so we could continue talking. We hit it so big. And so we continue to chat to this day. Uh, but we're okay with each other seeing other people. She was just wishing me luck on this speed dating event, and I was wishing her luck on her. She was seeing somebody on Bumble. I don't think it turned out though. And in the past, I would have been heartbroken about somebody seeing someone on Bumble. Now I feel heartbroken for her. So that's a good feeling. But kind of ironic that 5 years ago, I thought I was traveling to Taiwan as a single guy for the last time in my life, and this time I meet somebody in Taiwan. Uh, all right, so that's 5 years. The big highlights have been my return to the dating scene, obviously, my time in the Rocky Mountains, the bismuth art career that I was accidentally introduced into, and then I introduced a friend to metals, as investing in mining stocks as well, and correcting my eating disorders, my career pivot both into the community colleges and later on into the art projects, and perhaps I'm going to pivot again. I might consider moving to Taiwan, uh, and I have a new circle of friends now. I have a new feeling about life in Phoenix, right? Now that I have a good circle of friends, I hope to do it again. I might. I'm probably not going to offer as big a reward in the future, but if I have an interesting art piece, right, I'll offer that as a reward to get even more connections, right? Like I said, as long as I get that first date under my belt, I usually get something out of it. When I did the math, only 40% of the time have I gone on a first date, and that was it, right? I didn't make any more connections. I didn't see them again. And usually they lead. A first date almost always leads to more connections with other people, further dates, an idea of some sort, a new, sometimes a new job. Almost always, right? Only 40% of the time have they completely just zeroed out, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.